Hey, what's going on everybody? This is Ryan Wells here with Blue Line Optics. Again, I wanted to come at you today with a video about how to mount a rifle scope. Now, I just got a nice new set of Burris Extreme Tactical rings, medium sized, and I wanted to mount them, and I thought this would be the absolute perfect time to make a video on how to mount a rifle scope. So Sun Tzu, The Art of War, said, "He will win who, prepared himself, takes the enemy unprepared." Now, that's very deep, I understand, but it relates directly to what we're going to be talking about today, because the art of good shooting really has a lot to do with being prepared. Okay, a really good shooter takes the human element out of the shot, and by taking the human element out of the shot when it comes to preparing the rifle means making sure that this is going to shoot perfect by itself, so that you know if there's a mistake downrange, you're the one that's making the mistake. The thing is that if you're the one that's making the mistake, you can fix that and you can work on that. If it's the machine doing it, that's a lot harder to do, and it takes a lot more time and sometimes more money to do. Now, the parts that you're gonna need are your rifle, obviously, a mounting base, like right here I have a Picatinny rifle, or sorry, a Picatinny rail. And this just actually just came with my rifle, but I mean, you can buy one of these at your local sporting goods store or on our website or whatever it is that you want to do. Then you're going to need a set of rings. The set of rings are going to depend on the size of the scope that you have. What you will need to look for is the diameter of the tube of the scope, and it's going to say that in your reticle or in your scope manual. It's going to say what the diameter of the tube is. Is it 30 millimeter? Is it 34 millimeter? Is it 1 inch? All that stuff matters, and that's going to be the size of the ring that you want to get. Now, you're going to also be given the choice between small or medium or high rings as well. I personally go with medium. That's what I'm doing with these right here. These are medium rings, 30 millimeter medium rings. So, but the rest of it is kind of just up to you. What you want to make sure is that you get them high enough so that when you mount this front part of your scope is not hitting the top of the barrel. You don't want that. You want it to be just above it. You want it to be as close to the barrel as you can get without it touching the barrel. Okay? Then you're also going to need your scope, obviously, but you're also going to need a level, which I have in here. And I mean, some people get these nice little fancy levels that they can that they put on like the edge of the barrel, and they put on the rifle scope and stuff like that. And that's totally fine if that's something that you want to do, that you want to spend your money on. I myself, I just use these basic little levels right here. I picked them up for about $3 at Home Depot, and that works just fine for me. Then a gun vise or something to hold your rifle steady and stable. I use a gun vise because it is the best for keeping it, level as we're working through it. Some people use a bipod. I personally don't use my bipod because bipods can become loose and then tilt the rifle, and then you're going to get a canted rifle mount, and that sucks because you're going to go to shoot and it's not going to shoot where you want it to go. And then you're going to need a torque wrench of some kind. I just have a basic. I have like a Husky torque wrench that just has all the different torques in it that I can use. But your rifle scope should come with the basic little wrench that you're going to need. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first step, if you haven't done this already, is you want to make sure you remove the bolt. Okay. We are all about firearm safety here. And I know you don't have a round in the chamber, blah, blah, blah. You've checked everything, got it, okay? And that's what pretty much everybody thinks right before they end up accidentally shooting themselves or somebody else, okay? So just be safe, remove the bolt, man. It's fine. Now, after that, we're gonna mount the mounting base here. And mine actually already came with it on it, but I took it off just so I could show you kind of how it's done. Now, mine is a Picatinny rail, and that means that it's just one long rail with all these different little grooves in it that you can put your that you're going to be able to put your scope rings into. That being said, some of you might have something different. You might have a Weaver rail, which is going to have just two of these little rings on, or two of these little grooves on the edges instead of grooves all over the rail. Or you might have these just like really fancy little mounting bases that are just like these little pieces of metal that you put on each side. That's totally fine. It all does the same thing. However, you want to make sure that you're putting the right one first. If you have those two little mounting ones, you want to make sure you're putting the right one at the front. And then you also need to make sure that when you go to buy one of these, you're buying one that's compatible for your gun specifically. Like this is compatible for Rugers, which is what I have. I have a Ruger American 308, which is a sweet gun, if I do say so myself. And you just want to make sure that you have one, like I said, you just want to make sure that you have one that's going to fit, no problem. Now when you're screwing them down, in order to avoid stripping your screws, or worse, the little threads that are on the inside there, which would not be very good at all. You'd probably have to replace the entire the entire component here. You know, get them tight to where you can't really move them anymore, but you don't want to get them too tight because you don't, like I said, you don't want to strip them. But you do want to make sure you get them tight because this is going to be taking a lot of that recoil that's going to be shooting from the gun. This little base right here is going to be taking a lot of that recoil, so make sure you get it nice and tight. Okay, and now we're going to level the rifle. And what's sweet is that this little Picatinny rail here is perfectly flush with the surface, so we can just go ahead and look at the level here and make sure that that is as close to perfect as possible. I am not a fan of good enough at all. I don't like good enough, especially when we're mounting a rifle scope. Remember, we're trying to take the human element out of the shot. And when we do that, we need to make sure that our machinery is functioning properly. So when we shoot, we know that it's not the machinery that's screwing up, but it's us. Okay? If we're screwing up, we can fix that. That's totally fine. You need a little bit of practice, and you learn how to not make so much of a trigger jerk or whatever it is that you're dealing with. But if you've mounted this wrong and you're shooting, then it's screwing up, you're going to have you might think that you need to make an adjustment on you, when in reality you need to make an adjustment on the scope because it's canting a certain way. We're going to talk about canting a little bit later on. But anyway, moral of the story, make sure that that's about as perfectly level as you can. If you're using a gun vise, get that really tight right there so that when you start to mount these on it, it's not going to jiggle around and not be level anymore. We're going to continuously re-level it and make sure that it's fine, but just for starters, make sure that that is as perfect level as possible. All right, the gun is leveled. Now we can go ahead and start mounting the rings. As you can see, I went ahead and took them apart and put them in front here. So what you want to do is you want to unscrew them so that it comes out, but then you want to kind of keep the screws in the top there because it's just going to save you a lot more time down the road. You don't want to have to just get the ring all the way up on top and then start putting them in. Now, it kind of depends on how your ring is constructed. Mine it has these multiple little parts to it where this is going to come on to the other side of the base, and I'm going to do it towards you so that you see how it's done, and that's how it's actually going to fasten in to the rail. Now keep in mind, you're going to want to wrong way, there we go. You're going to want to make sure that you are keeping your rings at a good distance apart from each other so that it's not touching anything on the scope, right? So I know that if I put my rings put one right here in the middle of these two screws and then one right up here on the edge of that screw, we're gonna be good to go. I just know that because I've mounted this before. But if you've never done it before, then you might want to kind of play around a little bit before you get them all screwed in nice and tight. Then you're going to have to come back through and just do everything again, which is kind of boring. I mean, it's good practice, but whatever, man. To each their own, if that's what you really want to do. And be sure you get that really nice and tight there. You might want to get a screwdriver and just make sure that it's right there and tight. But again, you don't want to get it over tight because you don't want to make the screws kind of or this. Sorry, I can't even form sentences right now. You don't want to strip the screws. That's what I was looking for. You don't want to strip the screws. So I mean, it's important to get it tight, but you don't want to overdo it. Okay, so we got the bottoms of the rings mounted here. Now it's time to take another look at the old level here and make sure that we're still there, we're still center. Yep, looks good. And you're gonna wanna do this very periodically because as you adjust things, some things might move, might make it a little less perfect and whatnot. You know, better safe than sorry is what I like to say. Now, once we do that, we're gonna go ahead and just put the scope on there and make sure that those rings are fitting it the way that we want it to fit. And that looks like it's darn near perfect. I really like that. What we do now is we get the tops of the rings, and remember we have those screws already in there. If you don't, not a big deal, but that's just how I do it because it saves me time, and I love saving myself time. And now what we're gonna do is we're just going to screw these in, and we wanna screw them in kind of like how you do a tire, right? So we're gonna screw it in until it just starts to kind of give you a little bit of resistance there. Because what we're gonna do here is we're not gonna screw these down completely tight yet, right? We're going to wanna leave them a little bit of wiggle room because that's what we're gonna be doing with it. We're gonna be adjusting it for eye relief here in a little bit. And we wanna do that, we wanna be able to adjust it for eye relief after we've already kind of put the screw in. All right, they're all screwed in. Let's just make sure we can move it back and forth, all that good stuff. Now make sure it doesn't get too tight because you don't want to scratch it when you're moving it back and forth and all that good stuff. Yep, looks like we're all set up. Okay, let's start adjusting for eye relief. So you'll notice that I've switched it around a little bit here. And that's because, whoops, excuse me. That is because this is how we're going to adjust for eye relief. So eye relief, you want to take into account how you're going to be shooting the gun. Are you going to be shooting it bench rest? Are you going to be laying down and prone? Are you going to be standing? You know, if you're standing, good for you. It's amazing. But you want to take that into consideration. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put our head basically wherever it's comfortable. And then we want to adjust the scope according to that. And what we're doing is we're gonna get that little black ring that is on the edge of the scope. That's about perfect right there. We're getting that little black ring that you're gonna notice on the edge of the scope, and you're gonna get that to go away so that the picture is taking up the entirety of what you're seeing. You're not seeing that little black ring, and I got it to where it's just about perfect. Yeah, that's good. And once you have that, and you go ahead and you take your wrench and you make sure and you just get it all tight again. But before you do that, make sure that nothing happened with your level and get that all perfect and squared away again. Perfect. There we go. Now we go here, and we just there, and that's all good. So it's good on eye relief, and it's good on level. That means we can tighten it. We can tighten it and tighten it for good. And so you want to just go back the same exact way that you did before, and you want to get your screws nice and tight, just to make sure not to do them over tight because you don't want them to strip on you. All right, y'all. That's it. That's all you need to do to get that rifle scope mounted. Now all that's left is just to get out there and shoot it. If you got any questions or anything like that, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to help you out. See you next time.